Okay, so the next issue is that, okay, everybody can see that that's really bad, although we don't have a solution for it at the moment. But the next problem is that how we identify and define forest degradation is also highly significant, because what the science tells us, what research from 3 continents is telling us, is that when you put any piece of forest into a permanent logging rotation, whether it's clear cuts or selective, there's a permanent minimum 40% long-term loss of carbon from the system. Now, by any definition of forest degradation, which is supposedly about carbon in this process, you have created forest degradation by making that decision to go into a forestry rotation. And areas that are in production forest, if it's good forestry, then it's stable, and that's the best you can say. It's stable at least 40% lower carbon than it would be in the same natural forest system. So if we have the treatment of forest degradation done without taking that into account, all we'll see is another shift. It won't be as bad as the shift to plantation, but we'll see large areas brought into logging with a 60% reduction in emissions. But what we know about the logging industry in the tropics is that it is very, very hard to stop those areas continuing to degrade. In other words, they don't remain stable at a 40% loss. They progress all the way until there's deforestation. Now, there's very good work being done in Brazil which shows this. So in a study area that was tracked over time, 35% of the area that they could detect logging in, at the end of that period, was gone. 30% which had only had a single cut, which was left alone, canopy closed, minimum impact. The remaining 30% was they couldn't decide which way to put it, whether it was going to go to deforestation or recover. So what we're looking at, and this is recent, very good science, is that the minimum leakage that will occur when an area is taken into a forestry rotation is 35% will go to deforestation. Now, that is not a good outcome for the forest, and it's not a good outcome for the climate. So our strong view is that we have to have baselines which are set in ecological reality, and so we call that carbon carrying capacity. So that's what the landscape can hold. How much carbon does a landscape hold? We need to measure changes against that baseline. And so when you do that, then logging is a degrading activity. And if you don't measure those changes as changes in carbon stocks and just say, well, no, sustainable forest management, which we now have, unfortunately, in this situation, and you say that, oh no, sustainable forest management is good and it doesn't lead to a negative impact on the climate, the science doesn't support that. And so we cannot have a situation where we base our rules on activities, because that's what we did in Annex 1 with the LULUCF rules. And what we have seen is a continuation of very large emissions from the forestry sector in the Annex 1 countries at the same time as them claiming credits for the regeneration from their areas. In other words, we have very, very asymmetrical accounting. I mean, the other thing is quite clearly that if you want to get solutions in tropical forest countries, you actually have to involve the people who live in those areas, the people who have the capacity to stop the illegal loggers, the people who have the capacity to basically say, these are our forests, these are our lifestyles, we need to protect them in order to maintain our lives and lifestyle. If you don't engage them in the process, or you engage them poorly, then we won't get the outcomes that we all want anyway, which is the protection of the world's forests. If we don't get that, we won't have a climate solution.